Oh, yeah. It has been a long, long Christmas, New Year's break. But it's hammer time. And we are back in the saddle, ready to roll.
And we happen to be here on a, shall we say, snowy, wet, icy day.
That's right. And this is an anniversary day. A terrible, terrible day. That's right. We won't give it away because, you know, we record from an undisclosed location at an undisclosed time.
That's right. We have to be careful.
That's right.
We if we say too much, they might say that we are inciting some sort of a riot.
Yes, or an insurrection.
That's right. But, you know, while everyone else is home, saying they can't get out, making excuses, we made it, risked our lives right here for the Hammerheads.
That's right.
To make it to the studio.
We risked life and limb to be here with our beloved audience from all across the fruited plains, our Hammerheads. Right. It's been too long, and we're glad to be back. It's been a good New Year's. I guess Judge Merchant is having a great New Year's resolution, too. He's decided to go ahead with the sentencing of the former president and now president-elect, January 10th.
Well, can I go back and change my vote because he might be convicted, and I wouldn't dare vote for somebody that's convicted.
I know. I hope you could. Maybe you can. I think California's still counting.
Is that that's true?
Are they? I heard
probably.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Probably.
But hey, nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
I also heard up north there that Trudeau might be resigning.
Yes, I think.
I read the headline, so who knows if it's true. Hadn't read anything else. But.
Yes, I also saw a headline that alleged to link to a video of his resignation today.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to prepare to be governor of the 51st state of the United States?
Maybe so, but I'm sure he will do his best to live up to his father Fidel's legacy.
No, okay. Yeah.
But
if you've seen a picture of those two guys, it's crazy how similar they look.
Yeah, it's just coincidence.
Just coincidence.
That's
right. That's right.
But yeah, it's we're glad to be back with a new year, and hey, this could be the year, right? Said it Sunday in church. We know the second coming
could come at any time.
Right. We know the Lord could appear at any time, and we know that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we really function like that when we think about, hey, here's a new year, and then we have this, and we're planning this for 2026, 2027, and it's okay to plan certain things, right? But the point is that this might be the last year. Eventually, there will be the last year. And by the way, we're not making a prediction here at the
predictions.
Hammer Podcast. No Harold Cannings here.
There are no dates to be set.
That's right.
But yeah, it is interesting because a couple weeks back we were talking about the birth of the child who was the king, and that image in Revelation of him returning. Yeah. I mean that could be upon us.
That's right. Yeah. I mean we don't know. We don't know.
But exciting times to live in, right? Yeah. For such a time as this, that the Hammerheads, that we all get to be a part of this portion of history.
That's right.
And time where so much is happening.
And you know what we're called to do that is different than the apostles and the first century church. You know what's different about our calling?
Tell us. The Hammerheads want to know, Brad Rock.
Nothing. That's right. Nothing. Same thing. We are to be obedient to the Lord, proclaim his word, be faithful to gather on the Lord's day, not forsaking, right? The assembling of ourselves together, and worship him and stay the course.
Yeah.
Steady, daily obedience.
Keep the hand on the plow. Keep moving forward.
Right. Knowing that his word does not return void.
That's right. His word is a hammer that shatters the rock in a fire that consumes.
That's right. And as we talked about this past week, and I think we'll mention a little bit, even though we still have some things to finish up with marriage.
Yes.
One big thing that we're going to deal with, and then after that we'll come back and mention what we talked about Sunday with eternal rewards for a few minutes because I think that's so important. So anyway, so let's get into this.
A little bit of marriage.
Yeah.
So what's been the feedback, right? We talked about marriage. We had the the first episode. Then the second one was a little more sensitive.
Yeah.
Then we had our break. What have people been saying? What have you been hearing?
Yeah, well, the feedback, has been great, and the Spirit has certainly been working. I've had some brothers say to me, I was kind of a little complacent in my marriage, and, I need to kind of be awake, and I was awakened, and, trying to do some things that I should have been doing all along, and not, stop some things that I have been doing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's good, and then even had one marriage as a result of it. Just the Lord working, and people saying, "Hey, you know what? We need to be married. When can we do that, Pastor?" And said, "You know what? ASAP."
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, the Bible does not say you have to be married on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Wait.
You can do it any day of the week.
I thought it had to be on a Saturday.
Yeah, it used to always be like Saturdays, and then, of course, in the last, say, 20 years, we've seen a lot of people move to Friday, now even on Sunday because of the different venues.
Yes. You got to have a perfect – if you don't have a perfect venue, does the marriage count?
No. No. But, and I tell you what, the money these venues are making, I thought about making my own marriage venue to rent out. I don't know what I would do. Maybe just buy a field somewhere and – throw up a little shed that looks awesome.
Yes.
Hallmarkish.
Yes, Hallmarkish.
Now, if you could do a thing where you had fake snow.
Yeah, get snow blowers.
But yeah, there you go.
And so you could blow snow before these weddings, so it was like a winter wonderland.
Yeah, that would be. We're probably giving somebody, we have these ideas, but no money to do anything with it.
Yeah.
But we're probably giving somebody some ideas.
Hey, if one of the hammerheads wants to get in on that, let's
discuss.
Yeah,
we're looking for some financiers.
Yes, that's right. That would be cool because you could have winter wonderland weddings.
Absolutely.
With snowblowers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is
the brides would love it. They would literally think, Hallmark's got it's got like the same, building or whatever, big house,
right?
Whatever in every one, and then the mountain in the background, and then the fake snow,
right?
In fact, I think they have the same actors and actresses in every one, but nonetheless,
yeah, they kind of rotate roles, but they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Are we causing our female friends to be tempted by talking about Hallmark right now?
I think so.
Maybe we should.
I think so.
Yeah. All right, let's not do that.
So let's talk about this issue of singleness being better than marriage, or more holy, or more righteous than being married.
Yeah, is singleness more righteous than marriage? That's the question. And if you're married, you might not think about this, but if you're single, there's certainly a whole lot of pressure upon the single people in at least the United States and probably Western
the
world.
Western thinking.
Yeah.
The Western
the UK,
mind.
Yeah, the UK and things like that.
Yeah.
To remain single.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at that question too, there's a secular
getting choked up over this. Is near and dear to your heart, I can tell.
This is near and dear to my heart.
It's all that Hallmark stuff.
It's the Hallmark.
You like Hallmark yourself.
Hallmark mysteries, I will admit to. Yeah, the Hallmark mysteries I can handle.
Yeah, at least there's they don't show the murder, but at least,
there's a little
sometimes
bit of,
somebody dies in it, right? There's
some whodunit.
Yeah.
In it.
There you go. Like if Die Hard could meet Hallmark, we could if we could produce movies like that, we might be able to bring couples together.
Amen. That way, would be marriage counseling.
Yeah, that way she's not in one room watching and he's in the other room watching a game. And I've heard these things happen. I'm
only
not
heard
sure
about it.
I mean, of course, me being sensitive, I would forego a game and sit there with, my wife and daughter and watch the Hallmark.
Yes.
Because I'm sensitive like that.
You are.
But
Bad
anyway,
Rock
back.
is a tender heart.
Yes, that's right.
Bad Rock's a tender heart.
All right, but back to the subject here.
Yeah, singleness. And I think, when you consider that question, and, if you're married, you're a grandparent, right, or raising children, I think this is still a relevant question for you because there's single people in your life, right? And when you engage with those single people, they are inundated with two thoughts. There's the secular thought of you need to be single until you're in your 40s because you got to build your career and then maybe get married if you want, but that's a bit of an albatross, right, on you. And then there's the Christianized version of that where they have, I like to use the word hijacked, right? But they've taken the words of Jesus and Paul.
Yes.
And they've twisted that into some sort of, see, Christians should be single too.
Yes.
And so that's a question we want to ask. And they would then go to say that singleness is actually more holy, more righteous, and then that's the better path. And so everyone should be single as they are single. And so that's the question we want to ask.
Yeah, that's the thing. And of course we're gonna deal with that. The latter, the former issue you bring up, which the world pushes upon you, is definitely an issue because then what happens is people get married later, and I think experientially, what you see is that somebody getting married at 35 or 40, though there's nothing wrong with that, right? But when they purposely hold out and they get married at 35 or 40 and they're used to being kind of on their own or single, you get used to that. And now you have two,
very independent people.
Right, which, it's already difficult putting two sinners together, right?
No. That's easy.
Well, I mean, we've heard. It's easy for us, but, we've heard some have difficulties. Can't imagine. But, right, but now, so it causes even more of an issue.
Yes.
As far as those sort of dynamics. Certainly all those can be overcome. But we're not even really getting there. We're talking about this whole thing where there have been believers. It has gone through the church in our culture over the last decade, maybe more, where there is this idea that to be single is to be preferred.
Yes. And I think at its core, it's an attempt to be like the world, but use Christianized language to kind of pretend that they're not.
That's exactly what it is.
Right?
Bingo. I'm proud of you.
Brad Rock, I appreciate that, Brad Rock.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But that's what the church always does, right? And people get upset when I always go back to COVID. Well, it was 4 years ago.
It's been seared into our minds.
Right,
it's reshaped society.
But there, right, the world comes out, and you must shut everything down. You must wear this mask. You must get this vaccine because then you won't get it and you won't spread it. That turned out to be true.
Yeah, that worked. At least big pharma's rich now.
That's right. But the point of this is that then believers came alongside, right? And to reach the same goals that the world has, love your neighbor like yourself.
Yes.
And so Jesus would tell us to wear the mask, right? Get the vaccine. We even had fools out there. Jesus would get the vaccine, right? These sort of things. But anyway, but the point being that's an example of exactly what you're saying. And that's what we do a lot of times in the church is that we want to keep up with the world, but we know that their reasoning is nowhere near biblical.
Right.
So then we come up and twist, usually it's Jesus' words, in this case, Jesus and Paul, right? And then we come up with a whole nother avenue of argumentation, but the end outcome is the same as the world's.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And then I think what happens is there's nefarious people, right, who just want to be like the world.
Sure.
And then there's innocent sheep that are young and their minds are moldable and shapeable that hear that talk and then are led astray, right? They will stay single into their 30s and 40s thinking that they're doing something righteous because someone who was nefarious painted a picture that's not at all what Jesus or Paul was trying to say.
Yeah, that's right. And those are really the believers, brothers and sisters in Christ we're speaking to.
That's right.
Right.
And, in the college class, I end up talking to people about that stuff all the time. And you can see some of them are very wrapped up. Like they've white-knuckled this idea of singleness being a holy, righteous thing that's preferred to marriage.
Right. Yeah. And in some cases, it's just that they didn't mean to be single at this point in their lives, but they are. So then they grasp that's kind of like the person that, is 40 and has been in mom and dad's basement and hasn't really carried a job and all, so they hardly have a dime to their name. And then they talk about, but poverty is godly because that's where they're at.
Yeah.
Right. So there's some of that. And for those people, they just need to, wake up, repent, be responsible, and they probably would be married.
Yes.
But to the others, what you're talking about, and by the way, when I speak like that, remember, here at the Hammer Podcast, we're here to give you the truth that others won't.
Yes, that's right. And speaking of the truth,
Yes.
Today we've got to pay the bills. All right, Hammerheads, we've had a couple of weeks off here, and we got to pay the bills. So today's episode has been brought to you by the truth. It's the best Christmas gift you will ever receive.
Ah, nice,
nice. And we're also being sponsored today's episode by Mike Lindell and the Flannel Sheets. Okay, so they're out. Yeah, the Flannel Sheets are out right now. And there's a discount code somewhere.
I heard it's the best flannel ever.
It's the best flannel ever. You'll get the best. You will luxuriate.
Does the mustache come with it?
The mustache and the cross.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
They have actually biblical themed pillows you could also buy. All right. Back to the issue of singleness.
So where does this all come from biblically when people try to connect it? Well, 1 Corinthians 7, verse 7. And of course, Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 is giving some teaching about marriage, divorce, and so forth. We can't get into all of that. We've talked about some of that before. But then in verse 7 of 1 Corinthians 7, he says, "Yet I wish that all men were even as I myself am. However, each man has his own gift from God, one in this manner and another in that." So a couple things here. Paul, when he says this, is single. Now, we could do a whole show on whether or not Paul was ever married. I think he was. For the classic reasons that most throughout church history have thought that he was at some point, which is that, to be...
Of the class and rank.
Right.
He was in.
To be a member of the Sanhedrin, perhaps a Pharisee, that the Jew of the Jews, you would have had to been married, right? So...
Yeah.
Excuse me. So most likely he's widowed, by this point in his life. But nonetheless, at this particular point in time, he's single. But notice he says... this is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a gift that most people have, which is what he alludes to in chapter 19 of Matthew.
Yeah.
Right? And then
the gift means that it's, like you said, not most people have it, so it would be an exception to the standard. What's the standard? Marriage, right? Genesis 1.
Right, that's right. And then he expands a little bit. If you go to verse 32 of 1 Corinthians, beginning of verse 32, he just starts talking about basically, look, somebody who's unmarried is free of the concern that a married person would have in terms of pleasing their spouse, watching over their home. And of course, if you have children, children take up a lot of time. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's a good thing.
Right.
But they do, if you're going to parent correctly.
Yeah.
Right? Children take up time. Now, that's also a good thing because, when my children were younger and I was taking the time to spend time with them, to discipline, to just live life, to, wrestle around with the boys, to hang out, to coach and go to ball games with boys and my daughter, and all of that takes time, but it also does something to you. It sanctifies you in a way, and allows you experiences that you just can't get by reading a book on parenting.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a waste of time.
Right.
But it takes time.
It is a use
and that's
of time.
Paul's thing, right? And so Paul's thing is just, look, if you have the gift of singleness, then great. Then, God's going to then use that for God's sake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody has the gift of singleness, one of the things that should mark their lives is that we ought to look at them and say, wow, this person is just like nonstop serving the Lord.
Throwing up dust.
Yeah, right. From Sunday.
Being a deacon, from Sunday.
So that should be one of the signs. Like, it's not like this person's got all this time to sit back and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But most people don't have that gift of singleness. Now, in a moment, we'll talk about how might we know we have it or whatever, right? But the point there is Paul's not saying, it's taken out of context to say that Paul's saying this is a godly or more holy way.
Mm-hmm.
If that was the case, he would say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Or Jesus would say that.
Right.
In fact, Jesus had no problem at times saying, look, you say this. I'm going to show you a better way.
Right.
Okay. He doesn't say that. So few there be that have this gift of singleness.
Right.
So, I mean, but I think maybe we should talk about how might we know if we have that gift.
Well, and I do. Before we go there, I think another interesting point, with good Bible study principles, we let the clear help us understand the unclear.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you were never to have read 1 Corinthians 7 or hear Jesus saying that some make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom, you would think that the norm from Genesis 1 is that it's not good for a man to be alone. Therefore, get married.
Right.
Right? And so that's a very clear arc all across the Bible. And then we have these two passages that you read and you're like, oh, what's going on here? Right? And so it's an unclear statement that we're saying, okay, well, how do we understand this? Should we all divorce our wives or divorce our husbands and get single because that's what God said? Or is there something else going on here? And so we keep thinking, we keep studying, and then we come to the conclusion that we're saying now is that it's a gift and it's an exception to the standard. The standard is that it's not good for a man to be alone. He needs to leave his father and mother, and the two become one.
Yeah.
But so then the question then is, begged by these single people, they're listening, the hammerheads, they're saying, well, so how do I know?
Yeah.
If I have that gift.
Yeah. And, it's easy to say, like, we've had people come through the church before that, guys who, God's calling me to be in the ministry. He's calling me to be a preacher. And, I have the gift of teaching. And you work with them and you hear them a few times and you realize, whatever gift you have, it's not teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Those are always hard conversations to have, too, but they're necessary.
They were called, so you can't question the call.
Right. But so this one's a little different, like how do you, how do you evaluate how you're doing as a single, right? But I would say that part of it would be the desire of your heart. Paul clearly does not express here. You don't read anything here where Paul is acting like, I've got this, I'm single and I really don't want to be.
Yeah, I'm ready to mingle.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
I'll be here all night.
Yeah, he was single and, was not ready to mingle, right? So he accepted it and even seemed to prefer it for himself, right? Like, I guess content is the word, right? He was content with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of it is if you have that gift, I think part of it would manifest itself in it in that you really don't have the desire, or at least as much of a desire as others do that are single, to be married.
Right.
For some single folks, it consumes them to the point to where I wonder if it almost becomes an idol.
Right. This pursuit of marriage.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
Which, then God, out of love for you, may never give that to you because you're going to pursue that, and it will never live up to whatever you thought it was going to be.
Right.
Because you thought it was the end all when Jesus is actually the end all.
Right.
But anyway,
yeah. That's a good point. And I think some people say, oh, well, they had a bad relationship, right?
Yeah.
So they were in a long-term relationship with someone, maybe for a year, 6 months, 3 years, whatever. They break up, and they're so, torn up by that.
Yeah.
Right? Their hearts hurt. And so they think, oh, see, I'll never get married. I have the gift of singleness. And they kind of do the Eeyore. Oh, woe is me.
Yeah.
And they were burned, right, by the boy or the girl that they were dating.
Right.
And so in that hurt, they've just decided that, see, I've always heard this thing about singleness. I think that's for me. I must have the gift of singleness.
Well, that would be an emotional reaction, right?
But it's a reaction that a lot of people tend to have.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we're not going to be able to sit here because the Bible doesn't say this is exactly how the gift manifests itself, right? So because it doesn't say that, we're not going to be able to give anyone a perfect answer. But again, I think it would go back to, maybe, everyone's going to struggle with, lust to a degree, but perhaps them to a less degree.
Right.
But definitely, I think contentness is a key. We should always be content. But you know, I also think, and I don't hear people talk about this a lot, so I'm almost afraid to bring it up because, you know, maybe it's just Mike's heresy here.
Snurdly, should we?
Be ready to
mute it. We'll mute it if we need to.
But I wonder, you know, some gifts are like temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Some are, and I'm not even meaning the spiritual gifts in terms of, you know, they were around at this time and then this isn't, but I mean even for each person.
Yeah.
So you know, I wonder if it's possible for somebody to have, you know, God grant them the gift of singleness for a period in their lives.
Yeah.
And then they no longer have that gift. Like I've heard of people, believers that, you know, get married in their 40s or even later.
Yeah.
And you're going to ask me for an example, and I can't. You know, I'm thinking even of a couple missionaries, but
the hammerheads do want to have an example, but we'll, you know,
right.
They'll have to imagine in your mind.
So I mean, I wonder if maybe they were pretty content, because I mean, I can't remember. There's one woman on the mission field. Another missionary is recounting it in the book. I couldn't even tell you the book, but you know, talking about how basically she was just totally content,
right?
Not being married, and then I think she was almost 50, and along comes a guy. I think he was a widower, if I remember correctly. Of course, a believer, and they got married. So you know, I wonder if. So, okay, God gave her the gift of singleness for a particular purpose for a time in her life.
Right.
And then granted her the opportunity to marry. So maybe the gift of singleness itself isn't lifelong with a person.
Well, and
which certainly would be the case, by the way, with Paul, not to interrupt you. If he were married first, which, again, I'm quite sure he was personally, but, you know.
Well, and that was what I was going to say is that that was the case with Paul. Then Paul even brings that up in this 1 Corinthians 7 passage, and then in the pastorals, he's talking about true widows and which widows you should help and which widows you shouldn't help, right? Because he says if you're a young widow, you should remarry so that you don't get consumed by the world, right? And then if you're an older widow and a true widow that's not going around causing problems, then the church, and doesn't have family to help them, then the church should help you. And you use that singleness for godliness.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I think it's a good theory of the case that singleness has seasons. And then, you know, you bring in our modern day culture where people travel all the time. You leave your home to go to college, right? And so we don't arrange marriages in the way that they used to in the ancient Near East. We're not going to the well, right? Seeing
and still in some
woman,
you know, some cultures now
they
that still
do that,
happens,
right? But at least in our general Western circles,
that's right.
Right, it's you go on eHarmony, right? I was looking at some chart where before the online dating, everyone met people with their friends, family, and church. Yeah. Now with online, everyone's meeting online, right?
Yeah, there is a tremendous amount of that, and you know, and we're not saying that's right, wrong. We're just saying this is
observation,
right.
Yeah, all it is an observation.
I do think, I mean, our modern day technology, that is a thing kind of where it's almost like people can struggle to carry on a normal conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I often thought maybe we should offer, you know, classes for guys on, you know, how to break the ice and have the courage, you know, to go up to a girl and you know,
have a conversation.
Just have a conversation and, you know, see where it goes, you know? But anyway, I think too, and I want to say this because I think this, and this might apply to, you know, somebody listening, I don't know, but sometimes there's paralysis by analysis. There's this, like, you're looking for perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, you're not married because you're looking for perfection. And it's like, you're not going to find that.
Yeah.
You know? And it might be you're looking for, you know, I want to be careful how I say this, but I mean, you might be like, you think you're the most handsome guy, the most beautiful woman. And again, beauty's an internal thing, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe you are, but but you're looking for like a 12 out of a 10 looks wise.
Yes.
And so there's your problem.
Yeah.
Then it can also be you're looking at somebody saying, well, he is just not godly enough. She is just not godly enough. Okay. You're not going to marry Jesus. Okay.
Some people try to.
Yeah. And you're not even going to marry the Apostle Paul.
The nuns. Don't the nuns marry Jesus?
Yeah. Right. Right. So, I mean, you get what I'm saying. So now, again, I would hate for anybody here to say, well, he's a drug dealer, but maybe you're right, Mike. He could give up that drug dealing. I think I will marry him this weekend. We're certainly not talking about that, right?
This requires some common sense.
Right. We're not talking about just throw out any red flags and all that. But what I'm saying is, if you're looking for perfection, I mean, you're not going to find it. Especially not, you're not going to look at a 20-year-old guy. A 25-year-old guy, a 20-year-old woman, a 25-year-old woman. If you're looking at them and then comparing them to, if you have a godly father, who's 50, 60, okay, imagine how they were at 20 or 25, right? So you can't expect to find a 50-year-old Christian man with that kind of maturity at 20.
Yeah.
Or a 50-year-old Christian woman with that kind of maturity at 20. They got that. They didn't have that at 20 and 25. And they got that, and much of it they got through their marriage and through life.
Their children.
And you will too, and he will, and she will, right? So again, it's kind of like I think I said from the pulpit, don't resist marriage, but don't rush into marriage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think it's a great point. And those are the right, those are the dangers on either side of it. Right? Is that you are resisting it.
Right.
And you're saying it's a more noble task, but maybe you need a heart check. You just have unrealistic expectations. Right? Like you've allowed the internet, right? And what the internet says, because there's options everywhere, right? The options are endless, and you keep saying, oh, well, what if this? What if that? What if this? Right? Whether it's what a woman wants out of a man or what a man wants out of a woman.
Right.
Right? And so they like you said, are paralyzed by this over-analysis and this expectation that's unrealistic. And then because they know that sounds bad, they then use the cover of, well, Paul said it's better to be single.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
I think a lot takes place. So anyway, that's about, I mean, we could say more, but I think that's enough.
Yeah, I think so. Well, Snurdly says it's time for the Inquisition. So we're going to put Brad Rock, into the hot seat. Let me turn into the vault here. Whoa, this thing's gotten, this thing has gotten full.
Oh, a lot of questions over the Christmas and New Year. Wow.
Some New Year's questions here. All right, so I
even see some red and green paper in there. Nice.
Yeah, 'tis the season.
Nice.
Right, 'tis the season. Some tinsel and some holly, mistletoe and holly. All right, I have in my formerly East Coast wing stained fingers the Inquisition. This one's on gold paper, gold and black.
There you
go. Little, as you'll see. Should believers make New Year's resolutions? So it's a New Year's themed paper.
Should believers make New Year's resolutions? Well,
call the old Yuletide.
Yeah. If I could change the question and say, can they? I guess yes, but should they? The Bible doesn't say to make a New Year's resolution. Doesn't prohibit.
Yeah.
Making a New Year's resolution. So I guess so long as that resolution is, an Edwardian, right?
A resolve that is, for your benefit.
If it's Jonathan Edwards type where you're going to get closer to the Lord and it's living for the Lord, go for it. Nothing wrong with that. Or to get healthier or whatever. That's what I always hate. I'm not joined to a gym right now. I just got my gym at home. But I used to hate the first week or two of January. Man, you couldn't get a machine. You couldn't.
Now you always have a machine. Just
that's
kick the boys off.
By about week 3 it starts to dim down, and by February everything's normal again.
Yeah.
But so much for the resolutions. But yeah, I look, it's fine as long as it's spiritual in nature and biblical.
Yeah.
Whatever helps promote us. A lot of people would say, I'm going to read the Bible, or, like my daughter said, hey, can you give me, I want to read the Bible chronologically.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. When your child asks you that, can you give me that? All right. Yeah. I'm not sure she realized when I gave it to her that you're starting out in Genesis, but then before you even finish Genesis, you're going over and reading some of Job. I don't think she realized this is going to intermingle books, so I'm not sure how hard it will be for her to follow, but any kind of, resolutions where it comes to that sort of, I'm all for. Anything that's going to promote, holiness in our lives.
Right?
Yeah.
Blessed is a man who meditates on the law of the Lord day and night.
That's right.
He doesn't walk in the way of sinners, but sits with the righteous. Right?
That's right.
So that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to bring us to a close. We
got to get out of here. Look at that. It's icing up.
Whoa. Did that something just fell. We're definitely going to need to head out. We will see you in 168
hours.